Hello, we are live.
Hello, we are live indeed. Yeah. Good to see you again, John.
Likewise. Yeah. God, this is 3 weeks in a row. What happened?
Yeah, who knew? It might become a trend.
Yeah. And yeah, so today's theme could be letting go is hard to do.
Indeed.
And yet, of course, it's like one of the major practices. It's not like blatant in like you've got to let go, but like what are you holding on to, and what are the obstructions that are keeping you from letting go, and of course we all have them.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, unless we're becoming a monk, what we need to let go of is changes. I mean, in terms of material needs, right? We don't have to let go of our hair. We don't have to let go of our eyebrows. We don't have to.
Well, we could.
We could, of course, and
yeah.
Some of us don't have to even think about it. But yeah, so I'm trying to think of like the specific teachings that actually include that term as translated.
Letting go?
Yeah. One question. Of which is the end of the Anapana. Some people, I think, have translated the last line of the Anapanasati Sutta, the mindfulness of breathing, as letting go. It's let go of whatever you're holding on to. And I know with certain teachers, there can be the mantra of letting go, But I'm curious, from your scholarship, what comes to your mind
from letting go?
It's in terms of how it's included in the teaching.
That's a good question. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, I have to do some research to figure that one out. Yeah. I mean, certainly clinging is right. The basis, a second noble truth, really. I mean, craving and clinging.
Yeah.
I mean, clinging being the hardening around craving. And so letting go is, the third noble truth. And to that extent, extinction is a kind of letting go, the extinction of greed, hatred, and delusion.
Sure.
The extinction of craving. So yeah, I mean, it certainly is a part of everything that it's part of the Dharma from the very beginning.
Yeah. And then letting go of the idea of self.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's one of the hardest ones.
Letting go of identity.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest. I mean, it's relatively easy to sort of see through some of the conceptual problems around identity. And I think that's something that a lot of us will do when we get attracted to Buddhist thought in general, and attracted to the Dharma in general, is that we'll say, I mean, that's at least from my case, I mean, reading about the Dharma and reading about letting go of a sense of fixed, unchanging identity, core self at the center of everything, that seemed to be very, I don't know, maybe I'm unusual, but that seemed to me quite reasonable. But there's certainly a deeper, a much, much deeper level there, which is the extinction of conceit. The sort of I making and mind making, which is a much, it's not at a conceptual level, it's at an emotional level, and that's a whole different kettle of fish. And getting from one to the other, that's the journey we're all on. That's the path.
Yeah. And on the other hand, it's like, and when you're, if those of you that have been on retreat, I mean, especially a long retreat, where you kind of have no need to be identified as anything in particular, as anyone in particular. There's this experience of, yeah, okay, I have this body and people are identifying me through this body, but nobody, since we're not, if it's a silent retreat, there's no conversation happening. And much of the time, nobody knows who you are anyway, right? But so, and we're not given that opportunity. purposely, I think, to let people know who we are. So, we are kind of letting go of that need to be identified as anybody or as anything.
Mm-hmm.
We identify as our occupations. We identify, as our relationship. We identify with any sort of, a physical home to some
Mm-hmm.
degree. Oh, Doug, he lives in that house there. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
um, what is it like to just let go of that idea that in fact we own anything, or that so
Or
um
or a country, I mean, we all, this
oh
is the whole
yeah,
thing that we've been dealing with.
yeah,
I think at least I've been dealing with in the past, few months, not to say longer than that, but this, identifying as an American, let's say. I mean, what does
yeah,
that feel like now? Uh, how easy is that to hold on to, and is it how easy is it to give up, and how easy is it to see through that as a kind of a construction?
yeah, for sure. And of course you give it up for something else which you then identify with
Well,
that,
yeah, that's the
right?
problem. Are you
So
then
it's
going to cling on to some other kind of identity to
yeah,
get you out of that one?
right, yeah,
I'm this.
right.
Instead of being an American, I'm whatever.
Well, you're married to a Spaniard, so you could get a Spanish citizenship if you don't have it already,
Yeah.
and suddenly become Spanish.
Well, and yeah, and
um
then I have to give up my American citizenship because they don't allow dual citizenship. But at least they don't allow it to entering the country. An ex-Spaniard, at least from the United States, cannot become a Spaniard without giving up American citizenship. So it's interesting.
yeah, I mean, and yeah, it's yeah, just, and then of course there's more like societal identity,
Yeah.
or which is where it gets really dangerous. Us and them.
Mm-hmm.
um
Well, that's yeah. I mean, the identity is
yeah,
but bound up in this division of the world into people who are of my identity and those that aren't. It's sort of inevitable. I mean, it's the sort of sports team kind of thing. Where I think they've done experiments, and I won't remember the exact experiment, but it was like, they would just pick people randomly by lots and gives half of the people, blue pennies and half of them red pennies, and then you begin to see the ones that don't have your color pennies as being sort of worse people. It doesn't matter. I mean, the facts of the matter are
right,
irrelevant,
yeah.
but just because they they have a different color that they're on their shirt, you begin to think of them as them. It's almost this kind of automatic,
Yeah,
probably somewhat biological kind of thing that we have in us to do that, and it takes wow, it takes a lot of work to get under that.
right. So when the Buddha said there is suffering, this is what he's
Oh
this
yeah.
is yeah. And so the question is, all right, so how does one practice letting go?
Mm,
you know and it's like, what is it like to let go? And I mean, that can of course start in formal practice, with the sitting meditation, and just kind of with each out breath, letting go of something, you know or just as I said earlier, it's like, let go, let go. It's just like
mm,
you breathe in and then you breathe out and you say let go. Or
mm-hmm.
that can be a very helpful mantra. um and or just simply asking the question, right? What am I holding to? What am I hanging on to that I don't need to hang on to?
Mm-hmm.
um and all sorts of things may come up as you listen to that response, um as you hear that response. So it's um and that can be very transformative practice. But there's this fear, of course, we have of letting go. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, if I let go, what do I have to hold on to?
Yeah,
And
that's the thing.
yeah, and so, but I think that's also the beauty of formal practice, because at that moment you're really not holding on to anything anyway. Um, at least from a sensory place. Um, so yeah, there can be a fear, or there can be like a celebration, or the fear. Once you get through the fear, you can celebrate it. Um,
and then you hold on to the celebration, right? I mean,
Yeah, right. Of course. Oh, I've done it.
yeah.
But then there are other ways, on a practical level, just, of course, we've talked about this before, but an act of generosity is an act of letting go.
Sure.
As long as you're not holding to some, need for acknowledgement of the generosity.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and this is the thing, is that there's always this kind of, how do you want to say, dialectic here,
Yeah.
where you're um those of us who are not yet perfected, shall we say, um, when we're doing something like being generous, I would say, I mean, I'll just speak for myself. It's virtually always somewhere in there is that looking for something in return.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's very subtle, even if you're not, oh no, I don't really want any,
Right.
recognition or something, but there's a little subtle something there. But I think, at the same time, I mean, I think two things. First of all, it's really important to notice that, but it's also, I think, important not to beat ourselves up over it,
Right. Of
because,
course. Of course.
it's sort of like that, sort of laugh about it. All you can do is sort of laugh about it. It's sort of like that is the lot of us who are not, not enlightened. I mean, we're gonna get caught up in this, and always remember that the Buddhist said any generous action is good karma. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, there's better karma, obviously, but it's like anything that you do with a generous heart, even if it's not perfect, is good. And so, it's better to do something generous with
Sure.
all right, rather than not do it at all, right? I mean, that's the main thing, is that sometimes we can get caught up in this and think, oh, if I'm not doing it perfectly, then I might as well not do it at all. And that's not
Right.
good. That just gets you into a bad
Right.
place,
Right. 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 And I don't think any of our listeners will do that.
I hope
Um,
not.
but, but it is, and then there's, of course, letting go of unwholesome habits.
Mm, yeah.
Um, and, I think part of that is seeing how much of our identity is actually connected to those habits.
Mm,
Some would say we are nothing more than our habits.
yeah. Yeah.
And so when we look at the habits, are they really helpful, or are they getting in our way in some fashion?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, and what are other?
I mean, I think I was going to say it can be helpful. At least I find it helpful with that kind of practice, to spend time investigating the feel around these tendencies that we have, these things that we do often, our habits,
Yeah.
in order to see whether they are productive of happiness or not, or of dukkha. And in most cases, it's the latter. It's that there's this, the habit is deeply ingrained in us. We do it because we get some benefit somewhere, but there's also this underlying dukkha in there somewhere.
Sure.
And that if we can begin to look into that dukkha and feel that dukkha, that can be a help for us to sort of see a way, maybe to loosen a bit around that habit, because we realize that it's really not, it's not to our benefit. I mean, at least the way we're doing it now is not to our benefit. Maybe we can do it some other way that would, or do something similar, in other words, maybe replace a bad habit with a good one. We'll put it that way, or a
Yeah.
better one.
Yeah, and of course it happens in the reverse too.
Yeah.
Probably more often that we experience some level of dukkha, and then if we're interested, we look at why.
Yeah.
So what am I actually holding on to that I can let go of? It's creating this dukkha.
Yeah.
And that's really important to do. They're both important. I mean, either way, it doesn't matter. It's like, oh, wow, I'd never seen that before. There are these moments of discovery in the process, or moments of insight. For lack of a better word.
Yeah. Well, no, it
because
is.
That
insight.
is a moment of insight.
Yeah, it is a moment of insight.
Yeah, I was trying to be facetious there, but yes. And then, of course, the ultimate practice of letting go is when we die.
Mm,
Um, and how difficult that is for most people. I think it's just like
mhm,
letting go of this body that
mhm.
we're so identified with.
Yeah.
And so, those are things that we can practice on a daily basis, which is what the 5 daily reflections are. And in fact, in a way, the 5 daily reflections are nothing more than instructions on letting go.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
because even though it can be put, yeah, I am subject to aging. Okay, can I let go of the notion that aging matters,
Mhm.
or uh, yeah, I'm subject to illness. So we have to let go of our idea of our own health. Um, and the
Yeah.
hardest one is like everything that we have will be gone.
Yep.
So it's our practice continually is one of letting go.
Mhm.
Um, and uh,
All that we hold dear, which
yeah,
is, I mean, it's a, it's funny because I remember, I think when you discussed that many years ago in one of our Dharma classes, and I've had the same experience myself discussing it with people. There tends to be a strong reaction against that one. It's like people say, I sort of I don't want to go there,
sure.
um, because there's a kind of a power to that, um,
Or
where,
sadness. Yeah, it can be
yeah,
very sad.
a
Yeah,
sadness to that. People, cling so strongly to whatever it is aspects of their lives, their family, their friends, their houses, their jobs, whatever it might be,
yeah,
um, that the thought that everything that's dear to me will eventually disappear. My work, I mean, everything that people put their whole lives into their work with this kind of conceit that it's going to be eternal. Well, that's a conceit. I mean, that's nothing's eternal.
right.
And so beginning to understand that, and beginning to come to terms with that, and beginning to be okay with that, that's that's, it's hard,
It's a big
and
step.
it's,
It's a
yeah,
big
it
step,
is, it is,
and yet it's really important
yeah.
in terms of our own liberation, in terms of our own freedom.
Hmm.
Because until we recognize that, and until we practice it in various ways, by even just recognizing that this is a truth,
Hmm.
and accepting it as a truth,
Hmm.
sort of letting go of that resistance to this truth, um,
Yeah.
and um, yeah, I mean, having spent time with people on their deathbeds, you can sort of see it
Mhm.
happening in real
Yeah.
time.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And you can I mean, I'm sure you can see the difference between people who can do that and people who can't,
yeah,
which must
for
be
sure.
difficult.
Yeah, and sometimes it's that it's coming from the family can't let go.
Yeah, that's another
And
thing.
so if the family
Sure.
can't let go of the person who's dying, it makes it really hard for the person who's dying.
Hmm. Yeah, and
Um,
people, I think, don't maybe not realize that.
well, they realize it when they leave the room and the person dies, but
Ah, yeah,
but
sure.
it's
Yeah.
it's a pretty known phenomenon.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's hard to let go. There's no
Yeah.
question, of a loved one. And
Absolutely.
uh, although I mean, and I'm not saying this is easy either, but when you have a pet who's dying,
Absolutely.
you have that option of saying, why should the pet suffer when he doesn't have to?
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's also one of the, I don't remember when I was young, and actually by the time the first dog I ever remember died, I was already a teenager.
Mm.
So it wasn't quite as challenging had it happened when I was 8 or 7, you know.
Mhm.
But I remember losing a hamster or a guinea pig, when I
Mm.
was much younger,
Mhm.
and I was upset. but I wasn't thinking, oh yeah, of course, all things will die.
Right. Right. No, I can also remember losing a cat, like losing pets, cats. Um, yeah, hamsters. Yeah. I was some of them were very sad for me. Or even losing a tree. There was a tree outside my parents' house that it was a big elm tree, beautiful big elm tree. And this was in the time when the Dutch elm disease was really ravaging, the Northeast and I guess the whole country really. And eventually came a time when they had to cut it down because it was dying, and there was a danger of it falling on the house. And I just remember being really, really sad because this is it was like a big presence.
Yeah.
Huge. It was a big, huge presence. And that was really sad. And yeah, I mean, at the time, of course, yeah, I was too young to really think about it in dharmic terms. I didn't really know about the Dharma. So, but yeah, I mean, and it's one thing, of course, to think about all this in the abstract. And it's another thing to actually be faced with it. And we do what we can beforehand, by thinking about it in the abstract and trying to meditate with it. But when it actually hits you, it's a different thing.
Yeah, for sure. Depending on when it hits.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of, I'm just thinking about when my dad died many years ago. And he was in a coma for a few months. So it's like, at what point do you let go?
Right.
Because it was a total coma.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, and then what happens after you let go?
Mm-hmm.
Do you redirect that attachment somewhere else, or do you actually, can you really let go?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, these are all opportunities for practice, and we forget about that. A lot of people come to meditation practice because they want to make this moment that much better. And so if you introduce this like early on, it's like, oh, I didn't come here for that. And yet here we are, it's like, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So my encouragement is always just to practice as much as you can now, because basically we're practicing to be free when we die.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can die before we die, all the better. That's sort of how it's phrased. It's like, yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, you think that, I mean, that's a good point, that I think a lot of people who come to Dharma practice sort of come to it, how do you say? I mean, they sort of, there's a number of interesting talks by Ajahn Chah where he talks, he has this thing where he rails against happiness. He talks about how, people think that they're coming to Dharma, to be happy. And he's like,
right.
Happiness is just as bad as sadness. It's this passing thing, and if you're looking for happiness, at least as this kind of bubbly, whatever it is,
Yeah.
You're looking for something that's just a phantom. It's something that's going to come and go, almost by definition. And I understand that, and all of us understand, of course, that, Dharma practice can bring that kind of happiness to us. It can make us lighter and having a better life.
Yeah.
In the present moment, but in a deeper way, it's got to be something that is beyond happiness. Really, it's not looking for happiness so much as, well, we could say contentment, or even, but that's that's going more in the direction that we're looking for. Is this kind of,
well, we're looking for equanimity.
Equanimity, exactly. Yeah, equanimity, which is quite a different place and requires us to come to terms with some difficult stuff. If we're really going to be able to do that, when the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
as they say.
I don't know if the Buddha said that, but yeah,
Yeah. It's just a
so
point of
many.
phrase.
Yeah. So, I would, I always suggest to people that they, practice with that mantra,
Letting go, let go.
letting go, or
Yeah.
just as you start your meditation, like, what can I let go of right now?
Mm-hmm.
What isn't necessary? What isn't needed at this moment?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just this practice up front of letting go. I don't need to think about this job. I don't need to think about money. I don't need to, I can let
Mm-hmm.
go of all that stuff. And as you suggested earlier, in those moments where there is a strong sense of dukkha, look, then it's like, are you holding to something?
What are you holding to? Yeah. There
Yeah.
will be something you're holding to.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you holding to that's not helpful?
Yeah.
That's really creating the problem here.
And sometimes, I mean, at least for me, I shouldn't say sometimes. I should say almost always. It comes back and back and back. I mean, in other words, there's something
Sure,
there.
of course.
The dukkha, you say, oh, it's that I'm holding to. And then
Right.
you say, okay.
Oh,
and
it's
then,
that again.
And that again. And there it comes
Yeah.
again,
Yeah. So laughing about it is also important.
Yeah.
I mean, think about laughter as a way of letting go of tension.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you feel tension in the body, laugh, or just, what happens if you soften? Can you soften the body by letting go of that tension?
Mm-hmm.
Or is letting go of the tension the softening of the body? We can get trapped there, but yeah. So there's a lot to work with.
Yeah. And Thich Nhat Hanh always says, or often says to, just to have the smile when you're when you're meditating.
Right.
Which it's not quite laughter, but it's the same kind of thing, I think, of a little bit of
It feels
lightness.
different.
Yeah,
It
lightness.
feels different the moment you sort of, I mean, the moment you smile, something changes in terms of the muscles in the face and the nerves and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So something does really happen. Yeah. All right. Well, the one thing that is hard to let go of, however, is
which we can smile about and laugh about.
coffee.
Coffee.
And if you'd like to help us keep that habit up,
yeah, and defray some of the costs of our videos and audio and all the rest.
We had some nice coffee buys this week, and we appreciate that. Thank you for that. And yes, we bow to your generosity, your ability to let go, and it keeps our cups full. So please visit us at Diggin the Dharma and tell us what you have a hard time letting go of.
Yeah,
what's there that is really challenging.
Yeah, feel free to leave comments, questions. We're as we speak, we're doing a live stream, and on YouTube we live stream these, so you're welcome to show up and ask.
We try to announce when we're going to be there.
Yeah, sometimes the announcements go a little awry, but that's all right. It's that's life.
Yeah, we just have to let go of those attachments to time.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, friends. Until next time, keep digging the Dharma and let it all go.
Let it all go.
Thanks, Doug.